Hey everybody, welcome. I'm Sara Wiseman. Today I want to continue our discussion of this idea of change and the drastic and intensive amount of change that we're going through and what that might feel like to you. We talked last time, if you didn't tune in, you can check it out later, but we talked last time about how Pluto's going into Aquarius and how this means the end of all of the old structures, as has been foretold, right? And how this may affect your own dealing with boundaries in work and boundaries in relationship. And I want to apply boundaries in work to also boundaries sort of on the idea of boundaries with the globalized corporate structure. So we tend to think maybe the people in power are the politicians, or maybe depending on where you're from, you might think the people in power are the religious leaders, right? And so those are kind of old ideas. Obviously, globalization has meant that the people in power are those at the top of the food chain in the corporate world. So all of these giant global companies that affect our day-to-day. No matter, somebody once said to me long ago, like actually a couple people have said this to me, that they thought that the entire recycling of tin cans or aluminum cans was really just a way to keep people busy recycling their cans so that they wouldn't notice or they wouldn't have time to pay attention to the bigger problems of the massive pollution and the misuse of resources that was going on. And I tend to see the sense in this, obviously it's great to recycle, it's great to do our small part, but the bigger piece is the globalization means that those in charge of the resources and of how we are treating the earth, we don't have much say in that anymore. We're so busy consuming stuff. We're so busy eating food that is in packaging that makes us sick, or the food itself is filled with stuff that makes us sick, or the food becomes infected because the production line is so big it's really easy to get contaminated, or the delivery system uses so much resource, on and on and on. These things that were smaller companies decades ago have grown and become mega global companies. And so it's almost like they've grown out of control. And it's not just one company's grown out of control. Many, many, many companies have grown out of control. And you might say, why? And the spiritual answer is because the companies were created during, again, we've been talking about this Capricornian time frame, last 248 years. So all of those companies were set in motion during a time period where the goal was profit, or the goal was control, or the goal was to crush the competition. And so the goal was always about having the company be its own entity that was almost like a god or an icon that was worthy of worshiping at such a level, or of being in like the cult of the company at such a level that we didn't have time to look at the smaller things that were being affected until it was way too late. Now, it may be impossible to return to localized economy. I don't know. This may be what's coming. It's kind of hard to say. I haven't really been seeing that when I've been channeling the idea of localized economy, even though I think that's a valid idea, it makes a lot of sense. That's not what's been coming up when I receive it. What's been coming up is a dismantling of old structures of these giant global companies, and the turning of them through consumer outrage, or consumer disinterest. If everyone stops buying stuff, stuff won't get made. Like the corporations respond to the market. So both people's disinterest in consuming, they become disinterested, or maybe even with some of the food stuff that's unsafe, they just don't want to do it, and this becomes at a bigger level of awareness. So that instead of having our heads swirled by the flashing lights and distractions of marketing and advertising, we're like, oh, no, that's not good for my body, or that's not good for my environment, or I'm disinterested. I'm no longer enchanted. I'm no longer under the spell of the consumer marketing. And it's going to take a little while, because a lot of us are super under that spell, right? We're super enamored of the pretty things that we see, or the inspirational and aspirational lifestyles that those things promise us. So we have to kind of get a little more serious about stuff. Anyway, that all starts to shift. So when you understand that the real powers are not, I mean, political people are in power to some degree, but they are also just courting the larger global corporations, right? Religious leaders are in control in some parts of the world, but the parts of the world that are free are pretty big, religiously more free, are pretty big. And when we look at this consciousness stream toward awakening, basically anything that's telling you you have to do something in a certain way, or anything that feels like it's going backwards, or again, spiritually, anything that's based on this idea of separation, it's really like we've evolved past those ideas. We've evolved past those ideas like, I'm better, you're worse. We just have evolved past that. Even the people that are on the top are kind of like, I think they have something here. I think maybe I'm not the best one. And so now what do? Do I just, quit this job at the corporate headquarters? I don't know. As we're working in this, it's really useful to really look at everything that's being fed to you and really decide if it's real or not. And I wanted to read some of the Gabriel messages to you. The Gabriel messages seem to be like really strange and magical and weird, and also just like very straightforward. I think it's really interesting. But a lot of what the Gabriel messages talk about for this coming time is this idea of us being in a collective, a soul collective. And so, we're like those schools of fish where one turns and they all turn, and they all just magically seem to know how to do this. And so this idea of us being in a collective, being part of collective soul, and collective soul in the process of expansion, is in the process of evolving toward more awareness and more understanding. So this is where we are. Like, this is what this change piece is about. This change piece of timing, moving into Aquarian age. So we're not doing this alone. This is we're no longer in the hero's journey. We're in the collective journey. And this is really big deal. We're no longer in the one person goes on their journey by themselves and, they succeed. That's not where we're at. We're at this point of we are in agreement and we are in cooperation with the collective. And within the collective and as part of the collective is awareness, we create change. It doesn't mean our voice is less than. It means that our consciousness and our awareness sort of gets in the giant soul swimming pool with all the others, and we come to agreement. We come to agreement on how things are going to be. And this idea of you always go to the highest person in the room. That's what always happens vibrationally. And so whoever's the highest consciousness in that swimming pool that you're in, you're going to go with that level of understanding because you can. So let me just read this little piece. I'll read a couple of these. Understand your part. You cannot operate in a vacuum. You cannot operate by yourself. You are in the constant swirl of other souls because you are part of collective soul. In other words, you cannot remove yourself from oneness. When you understand your part in the whole that is one, you understand there is no reason to choose the misbelief of free will. Yes, the universe knows your dreams. Yes, the universe knows your longings. You will get there by being part of, not by being separate from. And I want to go back to this idea, to the misbelief of free will. So free will, you have the idea of free will or chosen destiny. We say this is misbelief. Free will is an idea from mind, ego, personality that is about believing that you are separate, that you are better than, that you are above the whole, which is oneness. It is about believing that you are more than or deserve more than others. This is not true. There is no hierarchy of souls. Your light is the same as the infinite light of others. Get a couple more. Okay, this was good too. This is also what's happening now. The mind cries out. The mind, ego, personality will battle the all of you, which is body, mind, soul, for control. When you know that this is happening, you can work to instruct the mind into a new understanding that it cannot work by itself, that it must learn to work with others. The mind, ego, personality cries out to be special, but when you nourish it with a regular infusion of divine light, with the comfort of wholeness that is found when you truly allow yourself to know oneness, the mind loosens its grip. It is not so insecure. It is not so anxious. There is something bigger to attach to instead of its own frailty. This is what changes and shifts you from the inside out. Look for ways to soothe your mind, ego, personality until it understands that it is really led by soul. So a lot of you guys out there, and me too, we're these deep empaths or these psychics or mediums or visionaries or channels. We see beyond the regular senses of reality. So we see things as they come in, and our view is not always validated by others who don't have the same intuitive awareness, I guess. So this can lead to a lot of second guessing of the mind, ego, personality, because on the one hand, we're tapping deep into our awareness. And on the other hand, most of the world is saying, what are you talking about? I don't see that. You don't know that for sure. You're just fantasizing that that's going to happen. And then, of course, it happens and they're like, it was just a coincidence. You couldn't really see that in advance. Well, we can, and we do, we all know this. So the mind, ego, personality for the really sensitive person, for the really intuitive person, is really about allowing yourself to trust that you're okay, and trust that even though you're seeing things a little differently than the larger collective, or the mainstream collective, that there are others who see things the way you do, and that that the way you are perceiving is incredibly valid. And so as you go into this new time frame, it's you and me and just anyone who's like, we look at the news stream and we're like, that's not really how it is. And we search for other voices that are resonating with how we feel. So continue to look for those other voices, and please connect with them. I love it. People email me all the time. I love it. That is one of the ways that I reach and find other souls, because we're often quite eccentric, right? I claim it. I own it. It's fine. Hasn't always been comfortable growing up, but that's who I am. I would guess that's who you are. Find those others and help each other hold fast to the vision and the understanding that is real, even though mainstream is continuing to say, oh, here's how it is, here's how it is. And you're just going, no, that's not what I'm receiving in my dreams, my meditation, my journaling, my knowing. That's not what's really happening. Anyway, you guys can find me, as always, at sarawiseman.com. I teach students directly in these amazing, really cool student groups that you can be part of. I also have tons of courses that are very affordable. I have lots of books, and the podcast rolls on. It's really important to me to be teaching in a casual way that everyone can access. I wish I could speak all of the different languages, but I can't. But hopefully you can use a translator or some kind of system or the captions or something that'll help you find what you need. Anyway, until next time, thank you, everybody. See you. And again, I'm at sarawiseman.com.